Picture a classic family dinner. You sit down, and the first thing handed to you is a steaming, perfectly packed bowl of white rice. It is the anchor of the meal. Around it, almost like decorations, are small plates of stir-fried vegetables, a little bit of fish, maybe some thinly sliced pork. For generations, this exact ratio has been the heartbeat of culinary tradition across half the globe. But what if the very structure of that comforting meal is quietly setting off a metabolic time bomb in modern bodies?
It is a harsh reality to confront, especially when that specific meal structure is deeply tied to culture, family, and history. We are raised to view rice not just as food, but as the foundation of sustenance. But the environment we live in today is fundamentally incompatible with the way those traditional meals are architected. We are looking at a massive rise in metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, and a very specific phenomenon, often called being skinny fat. And it all traces back to what is sitting in the center of that dinner plate.
That skinny fat concept is fascinating and incredibly deceptive. You look in the mirror, your clothes fit fine, society tells you that you look healthy because you are not objectively overweight, but inside, your metabolic engine is stalling. Why is this traditional diet, which supposedly kept our ancestors lean and active, suddenly betraying us?
It comes down to the drastic shift in our daily energy expenditure compared to our dietary architecture. Our grandparents and great-grandparents were largely engaged in intense, agrarian, or highly physical labor. A massive bowl of fast-absorbing carbohydrates was premium rocket fuel for someone plowing a field or walking 10 miles a day. Today, we eat that same rocket fuel, but we are sitting in ergonomic office chairs staring at screens. When you flood a sedentary body with a high glycemic load from refined white rice, and you provide very little dietary protein, the body stores the excess energy as visceral fat, the dangerous fat around the organs. At the same time, because the protein intake is so low, you lose muscle mass. That is the skinny fat paradox. Low muscle, high hidden fat.
So it is a double-edged sword. You are starving your muscles of the amino acids they need to survive, while simultaneously drowning your liver and fat cells in glucose. Which brings us to the first major intervention. It is not about throwing away the cuisine entirely, but rather what we might call flipping the plate architecture.
Exactly. Think of the traditional plate where rice is the massive canvas, and the protein is just a little splash of paint used for flavor. We need to completely reverse that. Protein must become the centerpiece, the heavy anchor of the meal, and the rice needs to be demoted to a side dish. A garnish, even.
That sounds incredibly simple in theory, but psychologically, that is a monumental shift. If you tell someone to eat a massive piece of fish or a huge block of tofu and just have 3 bites of rice, their brain is going to scream that the meal is incomplete.
It absolutely will, because carbohydrates trigger a very specific comfort and satiety response in the brain. But the biological payoff for pushing through that psychological resistance is massive. By elevating the protein, you are providing the necessary building blocks to retain and build muscle. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It is essentially a sponge for glucose. The more muscle you have, the better your body handles carbohydrates. So by flipping the plate, you are lowering the immediate glycemic load and building the very tissue that protects you from insulin resistance in the long term.
Let us say someone is not quite ready to drastically cut their rice portion. There is another fascinating strategy that feels almost like a biological cheat code. It does not necessarily change what is on the plate, but rather the exact sequence in which you consume it.
The eating order protocol. This is one of the most elegant, science-backed strategies we have, and it requires zero financial investment and zero calorie counting. It is pure human biology. The strategy is to eat your fiber first, so your vegetables and greens, then eat your protein and fats, and save the carbohydrates, the rice or noodles, for the absolute last.
It is like setting up a defense system before the invaders arrive. How exactly does that sequence alter the way the body processes the meal? If it all ends up in the same stomach, why does the order matter so much?
Imagine your digestive tract is a busy highway, and glucose molecules from white rice are sports cars. If you eat the rice first on an empty stomach, those sports cars hit the highway at top speed, causing a massive, chaotic spike in your blood sugar. Your pancreas panics and floods the system with insulin to clear the traffic jam. That huge spike and subsequent crash is what damages metabolic health over time.
And leaves you feeling exhausted and hungry 2 hours later.
Precisely. But when you eat the fiber first, it is like deploying a fleet of slow-moving trucks onto that highway. The fiber physically coats the lining of the stomach and the upper intestine. It creates a viscous mesh. Then you add the protein, which takes a long time to break down because it is structurally complex. By the time you finally eat the rice, those glucose sports cars are stuck behind the fiber trucks and the protein transport vehicles. They can only enter the bloodstream slowly, one by one. You have effectively turned a high glycemic bowl of white rice into a slow-release carbohydrate. You get a gentle rolling hill of blood sugar instead of a dangerous cliff.
That is brilliant. You are building a biological speed bump. It honors the cultural desire to still have the rice, but it neutralizes the metabolic damage. But let us get into the actual culinary mechanics of this. If we are flipping the plate and prioritizing protein, we need specific, actionable swaps. Let us start with the carbohydrates. If we are shrinking the white rice, what are we replacing that volume with, so we do not leave the table feeling deprived?
Volume is crucial for satiety. If you just remove half the rice, you will feel cheated. Instead, you swap that volume with things like cauliflower rice. It mimics the texture and absorbs sauces beautifully, but it is entirely fibrous vegetable matter. Quinoa is another excellent bridge. It has a similar mouthfeel to certain grains, but carries a much higher protein and fiber profile. And for noodle lovers, shirataki noodles are a revelation. They are made from a type of fiber called glucomannan. They have almost 0 calories, 0 glycemic impact. But they give you that satisfying slurping experience and carry the flavors of a rich broth perfectly.
Those are great structural replacements for the base. But what about the protein itself? In a lot of Asian cuisines, meat is often used sparingly, or when it is used, it is quite fatty, like braised pork belly or dark meat chicken, with the skin. If we are making protein the star of the show, we cannot just eat massive bowls of pork belly without running into a whole new set of caloric problems.
That is the trap many people fall into. They hear eat more protein, and they just double their intake of highly fatty meats. The goal here is sustainable fat loss and muscle retention, which means we need protein density without extreme caloric density. This is where we need to look at traditional ingredients that have been sidelined. Tofu and tempeh are absolute nutritional powerhouses. They are foundational to Asian cuisine, yet they are often treated as side dishes or soup fillers. A massive block of firm tofu, properly marinated and seared, provides an incredible amino acid profile with very little fat.
And edamame. It is usually just a tiny appetizer you get before sushi, but it is essentially a high-protein, high-fiber legume. Snacking on a large bowl of steamed edamame instead of rice crackers or starchy snacks completely changes the metabolic equation of your afternoon.
Exactly. And speaking of legumes, we have to talk about the Indian dietary landscape, which heavily relies on dal. Dal is wonderful, but there is a massive misconception about its protein content. Many traditional preparations of dal are highly watered down. You are getting a bowl of spiced water with a few lentils floating in it, and you are ladling it over a mountain of white rice. That is a carbohydrate bomb.
Right, because lentils themselves are mostly carbohydrates, even though they contain some protein. If the dal is watery and paired with rice, the protein ratio is actually incredibly low.
Precisely. The swap there is textural and structural. You need to prepare a much thicker, denser dal, reducing the water content so you are actually consuming a meaningful amount of lentils per bite. But even then, it is not enough on its own. It needs to be paired with a dedicated lean protein source. Instead of pairing dal with just rice and bread, pair it with grilled chicken, fish, or paneer.
Let us talk about seafood, because Asia has some of the richest coastal culinary traditions in the world. How should we be leveraging seafood in this high-protein paradigm?
Seafood is the ultimate cheat code for protein density. Swapping out fatty cuts of beef or pork for white fish, shrimp, or squid is a game changer. Squid, for example, is almost pure protein. It has virtually no fat and very few calories. You can eat a highly satiating, massive portion of steamed or lightly stir-fried shrimp or white fish, completely fill your stomach, hit your amino acid targets for muscle retention, and barely make a dent in your daily caloric allowance. It aligns perfectly with modern clinical obesity medicine, maximizing nutrient density while minimizing energy density.
It is fascinating how these ingredients are already native to the cuisine. We are not asking people to suddenly start eating boiled chicken breast and steamed broccoli. We are just asking them to rearrange the cast of characters. The supporting actors become the lead, and the lead becomes a cameo. But there is one more area that I think sabotages more diets than anything else, and it is entirely liquid.
The beverage culture.
Yes, the sweetened teas, the iced coffees with condensed milk, the bubble tea phenomenon. It is an epidemic of liquid sugar. What is the tactical swap here, especially when people rely on these drinks for an afternoon the boost, or a moment of comfort?
Liquid sugar is arguably the most destructive force in modern nutrition because it bypasses all of our natural satiety mechanisms. It causes an instantaneous, violent insulin spike. The swap has to serve the dual purpose of providing comfort while actually supporting our metabolic goals. Replacing those sugary drinks with unsweetened soy milk is a fantastic, culturally appropriate start. It provides a slow-digesting protein hit. For those who are actively trying to improve their body composition, utilizing a high-quality whey or plant-based protein isolate is incredibly effective.
Mixing a scoop of protein powder into unsweetened tea or coffee, instead of using condensed milk or syrups. You get the flavor, you get the ritual, but instead of an insulin crash, you get a muscle-preserving dose of amino acids.
And this ties directly into broader metabolic strategies like intermittent fasting. Many people use fasting to combat insulin resistance, allowing their pancreas to rest and their insulin levels to drop. But when you break that fast, if you break it with a sugary milk tea or a massive bowl of white rice, you undo a vast amount of the cellular repair you just achieved. Breaking a fast with high-quality protein and fiber, like an unsweetened soy beverage or a thick protein-dense meal, ensures that the insulin response remains controlled and the body stays in a state of metabolic healing.
When you lay it all out like this, flipping the plate, sequencing the food, thickening the dal, leveraging lean seafood, and cutting the liquid sugar, it feels entirely achievable. But there is a lingering philosophical question here. Food is so deeply intertwined with identity. When we start reverse engineering our traditional meals to optimize for insulin resistance and muscle synthesis, do we lose something of our cultural soul? Are we sacrificing heritage at the altar of metabolic health?
That is the most profound question we can ask about modern nutrition. But I would argue that true heritage is about survival and adaptation, not rigid stagnation. Our ancestors created these dietary structures based on the demands of their environment. Their environment required cheap, dense, immediate energy for physical survival. Our environment requires metabolic defense against an overabundance of easy calories. By adapting the cuisine, by elevating the tofu, the fish, the vegetables, and respecting the rice enough to eat it mindfully at the end of the meal, we are not abandoning our heritage. We are evolving it. We are ensuring that the people who carry that culture forward can live long, vibrant, disease-free lives.
That is a powerful perspective. It is not a rejection of the past. It is an upgrade for the future. We are keeping the flavors, the communal joy, and the ingredients, but we are upgrading the operating system to handle the realities of the modern world. The rice bowl is not disappearing. It is just sharing the stage.
Exactly. And the moment you experience the physical clarity, the sustained energy, and the physical strength that comes from properly fueling your body with protein rather than drowning it in quick carbohydrates, the psychological attachment to that giant mountain of rice begins to fade. Your body learns to crave what actually makes it thrive.
A metabolic awakening, disguised as a simple dinner. It forces us to look at our plates, not just as a collection of memories, but as the literal architects of our future health. If you are listening to this, the next time you sit down to a meal, look at the architecture in front of you. Ask yourself, Who is the star of this show? And who is the supporting cast? And more importantly, is this meal building your future or just comforting your present? The power to change your metabolic destiny might just start with eating your vegetables first.